What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Right now, we're going to take a look at Marvelous Marvin Hagler and Roberto Duran. We're going to take a look at that fight and see how this fight played out. Now, at this point, Marvelous Marvin Hagler wanted to face Sugar Ray Leonard's opponents because he was trying to get Sugar Ray Leonard in the ring. So one of the fighters that Marvelous Marvin Hagler chose was Roberto Duran, because Roberto Duran did show vulnerability to Sugar Ray Leonard, but Sugar Ray Leonard did come back to defeat Roberto Duran. But he defeated him in a way of humiliation, not quite knockout or unanimous decision. So that conversation was still up for discussion, and Marvelous Marvin Hagler wanted to prove that he can take out Roberto Duran to get that fight with Sugar Ray Leonard. Here you have all the builds up for the fight. They would build up the fight with cartoon ads. And just to give you a perspective on that fight that was up and coming, and it was a good opportunity for Roberto Duran as well because of the no mas situation. So this fight would help both fighters leading up to this. And they knew that Sugar Ray Leonard would be covering it because it was going to be broadcast on HBO. So it was a message from both fighters to Sugar Ray Leonard. And as you can see, there was a lot of cartoon ads supporting this fight because it was a curiosity around the boxing community to see how this fight would actually turn out, because it was a measuring stick on Sugar Ray Leonard's ability for Marvin Hagler to see how he would do with Roberto Duran. And as you can see here, they had Stanley Ketchel, Sugar Ray Robinson, and Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Top 10 of all time middleweights: Marvin Hagler number 1, Stanley Ketchel number 2, Harry Greb number 3, Carlos Monzon number 4, Ray Robinson number 5, Mickey Walker number 6, Tommy Ryan number 7, Tony Zale they had 8, Marcel Sedan 9, and Charlie Burley number 10. Very interesting. You see Marvin Hagler here. And this is all build up for the fight. Bobby Jacone, he was a crowd pleaser. He was a 2-time lightweight champion. His wars with Bazooka Lamone. It's fascinating. Cornelius Boza Edwards. Those are good fights. Here you have Roberto Duran with the all-time Latino fighters. Roberto Duran, number 1 from Panama. Ada Joffrey from Brazil, number 2. Kid Chocolate from Cuba, number 3. Pascal Perez, Argentina, number 4. Jose Napoles, Cuba, number 5. Carlos Monzon from Argentina, number 6. Kid Gavilan from Cuba, they had rated number 7. Panama All Brown, Panama, number 8. Carlos Zaret from Mexico, they had number 9, and Alexis Aguirre from Nicaragua, number 10. So as you can see, they have Roberto Duran, number 1. And here they have Marvin Hagler, great middleweights, number 1. So this is all designed to hype up this fight. You have Roberto Duran and Hagler on the cover of Boxing Illustrated. Now, Marvin Hagler's feeling kind of good now because he's starting to get some shine, some limelight. Because Sugar Ray Leonard had retired based on an eye injury at this point. Marvin Hagler and Duran was on the cover. October edition of Ring Magazine. 1984. and Marvelous Marvin Hagler. I have nothing but respect for Marvelous Marvin Hagler, because this is what fighting is all about. He wanted to get Sugar Ray Leonard in the ring. So he did something that Evander Holyfield did with Mike Tyson. In the case of Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson cleaned up the top 10 so that Mike Tyson would have no choice. I'm sorry, Evander Holyfield cleaned up the top 10 so that Mike Tyson would have absolutely no choice but to fight him, because it would be nobody else left. And that's old school. In the case of Marvin Hagler, he is fighting all of Sugar Ray Leonard's opponents for comparison of how the fight would have played out, providing it never happened. Hagler and Leonard. Very interesting how he did that. As you can see here, Roberto Duran from Panama, these were his accomplishments at the time. WBA Junior Middleweight Championship, WBC Welterweight Championship 1980, that was from Leonard. And the World Lightweight Champions from 72 to 79, that was from Ken Buchanan. Quite an accomplishment so far. Here you have Roberto Duran, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Getting closer to this fight. This is all promotion at this point. Yeah, two Hall of Famers, two absolute warriors giving a battle it out. Now you can see Roberto Duran is not in the best condition that he's ever been in, but this is Roberto Duran. Roberto Duran will walk around at 200 pounds and be in shape for the fight 3 to 4 weeks later. That's just how he was. Hagler was always in shape. Walked around about 162, the most. And he was sometimes coming around 157. Now, this is what really made Marvin Hagler very happy, because he started getting a lot of attention at this point, along with Roberto Duran. So this fight worked out for both fighters, because once Sugar Ray Leonard left the scene, it was about them at this point. And Tommy Hearns. Marvin Hagler on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine. It was October 18th, 1982. The best and the baddest middleweight champion, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Here you have Marvin Hagler taking care of some opponents there. He's knocking out Juan Rodan, Wilfred Scipion. Marvin Hagler was something else. And here you have Roberto Duran facing Edwin Viruet, Sugar Ray Leonard. Carlos Palomino. This is all promotion for that big fight coming up. All right, so let's look at the tail of the tape. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, May 23rd, 1954, Newark, New Jersey. He was 29 years old. He weighed 160 pounds. He was 5'9.5", 75-inch reach. Roberto Duran, June 16th, 1951, Gorilla, Panama. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Excuse me if it's not. He was 32 years old, 160 pounds, and he was 5'7.5" with a 67-inch reach. I thought he was from Panama City, Panama, but maybe that's where he was living at the time. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. Fascinating fighter. Fascinating. Now, we already went over his fight record when he faced Sugar Ray Leonard. The video I did with that one. So we're going to skip his fight record for now because nothing has really changed since then. And you have Roberto Duran. Fascinating fighter himself. I have him as one of the greatest lightweights of all time outside of Joe Gans and Benny Leonard. Now, he has an outstanding resume. We're going to quickly go through his resume. 1967, Carlos Mendoza, 4 rounds, March 8th. April 4th, Manuel Jimenez, killed him in 1. May 14th, Juan Godola, killed him in 1. May 30th, Eduardo Morales, Panama City, killed him in 1. August 10th, Eugene Chabaco, Panama City, KO in 1. And this goes on, KO after KO after KO. And that's why they called him the Hands of Stone. Now, his first loss was to Estefan de Jesus. This was 1972. November 17th, he lost in 10 rounds. Now, June 26th, he had taken the title away from Ken Buchanan in New York. Killed him in 13th round, wins the WBA lightweight title. But that fight was, it was always controversial because of the low blow at the bell. Ken Buchanan couldn't get up. They counted him out. Roberto Duran was the victory. But Roberto Duran was winning the fight, so I give him, it was a legitimate victory for Roberto Duran. 1973, Jimmy Robertson, Panama City, killed him in 5, retains the WBA lightweight title. This was in January 20th. He continues victories. June 2nd, Hector Thomas retains his WBA lightweight title with an 8th round KO. Continues to win. 1974, May 16th, Estefan de Jesus, Panama City, killed him in 11, retained the WBA lightweight title. And as you can see here, all knockouts. Incredible. All knockouts. 1975, March 2nd, Ray Lampkin, Panama City. Killed him in 14th round. He retained the WBA lightweight title. In that fight, they were carrying Ray Lampkin out in a stretcher. I mean, oxygen mask, the whole 9. And Roberto Duran said, next time I'll kill him. And you could see Lampkin being carried out in a stretcher on a TV screen as he said that. And that drew a lot of controversy with Roberto Duran. But, it grew his fan base because they wanted to see, a killer there. They wanted Roberto Duran was a monster, and that solidified it, that statement. September 30th, Edwin Viruet, Uniondale, New York, defeating him in 10 rounds. 1979, May 4th, Sal Mamby, who would be a junior welterweight champion. Miami Beach, defeated him in 10 rounds. Sal Mamby, I believe, took the title away. I think it was upstate New York. Very good fighter. I think he took it from Costello. I got to make sure. '78, January 21st, Esteban de Jesus. And he KOs him in 12 rounds and wins the world lightweight title back. Awesome. 1980, Sugar Ray Leonard, Montreal, wins the WBC Lineal Championship. Took that welterweight strap. 15-round win. But November 25th, Ray Leonard, New Orleans, KOs Roberto Duran in 8, loses WBC strap. Roberto Duran just basically no mas that fight. Couldn't deal with the tactics. Ray Leonard was doing a lot of showboating and everything else, and Roberto Duran said, I'm done. 1982, Wilfred Benitez, January 30th, Las Vegas, 15-round loss. WBC Super Welterweight title was at stake. And this is what was happening. They were trying to fight the opponents of Sugar Ray Leonard. 1983, January 29th, Pino Cuevas, Los Angeles, killed him in 4. Tommy Hearns had knocked him out earlier. 1980. '81. June 16th, Davey Moore. Now, this is what put Roberto Duran back on the map with his country. Davey Moore, New York, killed him in 8, wins WBA junior middleweight title. I was at that fight at the Garden. You couldn't hear a pin drop because there was so much noise in the Garden. 80 fights, 76 wins, 4 losses. He was killed in 5. He killed 57 opponents. How Duran and Hagler will fight each other. I mean, this was a phenomenal build-up. Hagler versus Duran. They were just hyping the fight up as much as they possibly could. Duran will beat Hagler, and they was explaining why. Hagler will beat Duran, they was explaining why.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening. 15 rounds of boxing for the undisputed middleweight championship of the world. Introducing, in the blue corner, the challenger, the current WBA junior middleweight champion of the world, fighting out of Panama City, Panama, weighing in at 156 and 1/2 pounds, with a professional record of 76 wins, 4 defeats, with 57 knockouts. Fighting out of Panama City, Panama, weighing in at 156 and 1/2 pounds, with a professional record of 76 wins, 4 defeats, with 57 knockouts. Ladies and gentlemen, a 3-time world champion, in quest of his 4th crown, introducing the man with the handsome stone, Roberto Duran. And into the red corner, fighting out of Brockton, Massachusetts, weighing in at 157 and 1/2 pounds. He has a professional record of 57 wins, 2 defeats, and 2 draws, with 48 knockouts. He is the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. Introducing Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
And so we're ready to go, live from Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. At stake, the undisputed middleweight championship of the world. The principles are familiar. Marvin Hagler in the burgundy trunks, the southpaw, against Roberto Duran in the dark blue. These first moments, so important. Both fighters wanting to test the strength of the other.
Hagler, of course, familiar to most people, that left-handed style. Remember, he will switch to righty at various times throughout this fight if he thinks he will be effective against Duran. There's a jab from Hagler, and that's a punch that he will need tonight if he's to win against Duran.
Duran working the body of Hagler, and he gets a warning from the referee to watch it or a low. Hagler told me that if he finds out early that he seems to be stronger than Duran, he'll go right at him, take him out of there immediately.
And indeed, Duran trying to go to the body early, that is a tactic many people believed he would do.
Now, so far, Duran seems to be a little too crafty for Marvin Hagler's game plan. Marvin Hagler's game plan is to find out what kind of chin Roberto Duran has.
They want to feel each other out and see just what the other has to offer. And for
But see, with Roberto Duran,
he can land his jab a little bit.
he has a lot of experience.
It will be important to him if he can continue to do it.
We're halfway through the opening round. A bit of a right hand by Duran on the chin of Hagler with a glancing blow. Hagler has never been down as an amateur or professional. Last time Duran was down was 9 years ago. He's down twice in his career as a pro. Both left hooks by Esteban de Jesus, oddly in the first rounds of those bouts.
You can see here Marvin Hagler working on the inside of Roberto Duran. And works out for him because Roberto Duran is not as mobile as Ray Leonard.
That right hand of Duran was picked off by Hagler. But not that one. Duran gets in a right hand. Duran's best punch is the right hand. Tries to throw the lead right. Watching Hagler at his workouts, he and Pat Petronelli worked on slipping that right hand and countering with both the left and the right. Hagler won't show his uppercut early in the fight. He wants to get Duran with that later on when they're a close quarter. Hagler had his left blocked by Duran as he moved backward.
Now, he fought in Las Vegas, Nevada.
He was awesome in that regard against Baby Moore, continually slipping Moore's right hand.
Al Bernstein is a commentator.
A wide open round. Let's go to the corner, Marvin Hagler. The Petronellis are there. Let's go to the corner, Marvin Hagler.
Now, the fighters go back to their corner. Goody Petronelli is telling Marvin Hagler Roberto Duran is trying to throw a straight right hand. So they're going to switch up their game plan a little bit. So the game plan now is to time the right hand of Roberto Duran and for Hagler to come up with the uppercut. As you can see here, Roberto Duran is coming down low. So he can come up with a surprising straight right hand. And here you see Hagler loading up with the uppercut.
That's not a scoop, everybody knows it. Round 2, scheduled for 15.
And Hagler said something very interesting. He said, yeah, I know, he's trying to get that thumb in there. Of course, Duran gave a thumb to Davey Moore early in their fight, whether intentional or not. It blinded Moore's vision and helped him win that fight. And the
Hagler's concerned about Roberto Duran's thumbing.
Yes. Duran with a short left hand. Hagler with a left hand of his own to the side of Duran's face. Hagler there showing the stiff jab and then the left cross to the head of Duran.
think the key question right now, and everyone.
Here you can see a left uppercut from the outside attempt from Marvelous Marvin Hagler to Roberto Duran. But Duran, as crafty as he is, he's picking off that uppercut with a left hand. His left hand guard is picking off the left uppercut of Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
Early on, Duran is getting under the jab and the straight left of Hagler.
Beautiful right jab by Marvelous Marvin Hagler to Roberto Duran's left eye.
As he's doing right there. Hagler working with the free.
And this is pretty much what was going on throughout the entire fight. They were playing a chess match rather than going in slugging.
People thought it would be Duran who would be ripping shots to the body.
Beautiful right jab by Marvin Hagler. Roberto Duran counters with the left himself. This is what great fighters do. They can read each other's mind, and it makes it that much difficult for the opposite opponent. For your opponent, I should say. To figure you out. You notice both opponents never take their eye off the opponent. You can see Marvin Hagler's left eye starting to swell because he was concerned earlier about Roberto Duran's thumbing. And that was his argument in justification for that left eye being swollen. Here you see both heads together. These are two master fighters right here. And this is when you get when you put two master fighters in a ring together.
When Hagler is fighting as a lefty, his punches are a little wider. Some people think that may be a problem for him, and Duran may be able to get inside the wide left hand.
And over again, you notice that right jab of Marvelous Marvin Hagler, constantly keeping Roberto Duran at bay. Duran trying to parry that right jab with his right of his own. See that left eye getting worse and worse for Marvin Hagler. Constantly using the jab as Marvin Hagler. There was absolutely no slugging going on because Roberto Duran has gotten Marvin Hagler's respect.
Well, we headed to round 3. He's landing the jab, but I don't think quite as often as he wants to, Sal. But will Duran be able to avoid it as we go on in this fight? That right hand by Duran picked off by Hagler again.
Says here, Jim Jacobs managed Ray Robinson without a doubt. Is the greatest. All right, so they're saying Jim Jacobs, who's a manager. Now, Jim Jacobs managed Mike Tyson and Edward Rosario.
He really has been going right at Duran.
He says Ray Robinson, without a doubt, is the greatest middleweight who ever lived. And Marvin Hagler had a problem with that statement.
Duran short again.
He read about it in an article. And he's trying to prove Jim Jacobs wrong. Now you see Hagler doing a little bit of a shoulder roll. And you see that thumbing of Roberto Duran. They had thumbless gloves at that time. I'm sorry, they had the gloves with the thumb in it. And Duran was a master of using every advantage he could to keep his opponent honest.
And this fight has certainly turned into a chess match. If people thought it would be a brawl, so far it is not that. And maybe it was never meant to be because we have two master boxers in there. Hagler showing tremendous respect for Duran. Staying outside of his power, he just switched to the orthodox style and banged Duran with a lead right hand. Hagler stays in the orthodox stance and switches left. Less than a minute to go in round 3. Duran with a left to the head. Hagler with a right to the head of Duran.
says here,
Duran with a short right hand.
Marvin Hagler was clearly going for a knockout.
Hagler with a big left hand that rocked Duran. Duran with a right uppercut. And now Duran.
This was an outstanding fight. Very, very good fight.
And this is where Roberto went.
Now, meanwhile, you have Sugar Ray Leonard looking at this,
Especially on the ropes. You'll notice that Hagler just spun away from the ropes. He doesn't want
trying to figure out
And now Duran coming forward.
what's the best way to go.
After that exchange, but he can't fight
Should he come back?
And they were both throwing flurries in that round.
And this fight just basically went back and forth the entire fight. I gave Hagler 5 rounds up until this point.
Don't try to knock him out every fight. That's not the name of the game. He sets back on you, see?
I gave Roberto Duran 3 rounds at this point. So heading into the 9th round.
Against Santa Firmo, or would he throw punches?
Now you can see Marvin Hagler
Throwing punches, but certainly Roberto scored
with a thumb to the right eye of Roberto Duran.
Marvin in the corner just
Not intentional, I don't believe, just throwing a jab.
not the name of the game. He sensed
But Marvin Hagler is a southpaw, which means he would be using his right to jab.
once Marvin on the outside. Boxing
And he is not in a punching position. He's throwing a left hand lead.
round 4.
Which means he doesn't have to necessarily turn his punch over. So that thumb definitely got in the eye of Roberto Duran.
Close the distance to Hagler, but closer than ever before.
And they are both
Here you see Hagler
at alternate times
at
during
the end of the fight telling Roberto Duran,
the jab and the left hand by Hagler. That's what he wants to get in, but
easy work,
really good job of slipping that.
not what I thought she was.
Hagler with a lift to the body. That backed up Duran for an instant. A big swat of a left hand by Hagler to kind of. A right hand by Duran. Right on the butt. That caught Hagler on the chin. Less than a minute to go in round 4.
Duran has shown us one thing: the right hand can get home to Hagler. Hasn't done that much in this fight, but he has landed several times.
Right to the body by Duran, but he paid the price. Hagler countered with a left hook to the head.
Hagler starting to throw.
So marvelous Marvin Hagler
Reverted back to the boxing style
and Roberto Duran.
after getting into it.
Marvelous Marvin Hagler retains his middleweight strap. But he's still not happy because it did go the distance. He didn't like the outcome as a draw. So he still had a point to prove. The only way he can prove that without Sugar Ray Leonard, he had to fight another Sugar Ray Leonard opponent. So he goes back on his campaign after defeating Roberto Duran. And he looks for that one guy that can make a statement. Because he wants to be known as the greatest middleweight of all time. And the comment that Jim Jacobs made about Sugar Ray Robinson being the greatest, he didn't like the comment, and he's trying to prove Jim Jacobs and everyone else wrong. Now, Marvin Hagler had his eye on one opponent for a long time. And this was the opportunity of a lifetime. Because Hitman Thomas Hearns also wanted another crack at Sugar Ray Leonard. So he figured if he got after Marvin Hagler, that would solidify him as being the best of the 4 opponents: Roberto Duran, Marvin Hagler, Wilfred Benitez, and Thomas the Hitman Hearns. So this fight was headline The Fight. Because based on both men's egos in the press conference, you knew it was going to be a fight. Because Hagler had something to prove, and Hearns had something to prove. And these fights here, we don't see anymore. We've seen it with Gotti and Ward. We've seen it with Morales, Pacquiao, Morales, Barrera. We've had some good fights like that, but the atmosphere is not there right now. And this is what we need to get back to. Holyfield and Bo was the closest that you're going to find like that of modern time. And it was great promotion for this fight. Very good promotion. They traveled all over the place, trying to get the attention of the viewers. And they did a good job. They did not have social media at this time. You needed closed circuit. Or you needed pay-per-view. And most of us had to go to the movie theaters, because you can go to the movie theaters and see these fights. This fight was in Las Vegas, Nevada. And one of the greatest fights in the entire history of boxing. So when I hear great fights today, I'm thinking they're talking about Hagler Hearns. It's the only thing I can think they're talking about. Of this time. No matter what name they throw out there, of this time, of this era. I'm not talking about going back in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 40s, in the 30s, or even in the 70s, or even in the 80s. I'm thinking they're talking about this fight here. In modern time, meaning 2000 and up. Because you had an outstanding fight with Meldrick Taylor and Julio Cesar Chavez. But you didn't have anything like this. You had to be at this time. You had to be around to understand what I'm talking about. Because both men's legacy was literally on the line. And they were trying to get Sugar Ray Leonard in the ring. This reminded me of Muhammad Ali and Smoking Joe Frazier. At that time, it was that, if you were a fight fan, now if you were just listening to it at the water cooler at work, on the news, that's one thing. But if you was following this heavily, this was some build-up for this fight. And we go to the tail of the tape. Hagler, May 23, 1954. Hearns, October 18, 1958. Hagler, Newark, New Jersey. Hearns, Memphis, Tennessee. Hagler, Brockton, Massachusetts. Hearns, Detroit, Michigan, out of the Kronk Gym. Hagler, 30 years of age. Hearns, 26 years of age. Hagler, 160 pounds. Hearns, 157 pounds. That was a problem right there. Hagler, 5'9", Hearns, 6'2". Hagler, 70-inch reach, Hearns, 78-inch reach. Now that's a huge reach difference. Just take a look at all of the fighters that Marvin Hagler fought. We went through his opponents in a Duran and Hagler fight coverage. This is phenomenal. See, this is a resume. Sugar Ray Seals. Vito Anafermo. Amazing. Roberto Duran. Mustafa Hamshaw. I remember Mustafa Hamshaw almost beat Bobby Ches to death in Madison Square Garden. I was at that fight. At the time, Bobby Ches was a middleweight coming up. See Thomas Hearns. 1977 is when he started. And these are all good fighters that Hearns is fighting. Clyde Gray, outstanding fighter. Harold Weston. Bruce Curry. Bruce Curry was Donald Curry's brother. Donald Curry was an outstanding welterweight champion. Pepino Cuevas. That's when he won a WBA welterweight title. Randy Shields, 1981. You have to do some research on Randy Shields. Randy Shields is an underestimated fighter. He was an outstanding amateur, very good professional, but he's an outstanding trainer. Salute to Randy Shields. Remember, he was in the corner of Vernon Forrest when he fought Sugar Shane Mosley. He came in the day of Mike Tyson's fight with Lennox Lewis. I know he was in the corner of one of the Charlo brothers at one point. I don't know if he still is. But Randy Shields is an outstanding fighter. As you can see, and trainer. Wilfred Benitez. Murray Sutherland. Fred Hutchinson, all good fighters. We already went over the tail of the tape. Both men training for this fight. You see here, Thomas Hearns at the Kronk Gym. And he's training with Mark Breland, up-and-coming welterweight. Mark Breland won a gold medal in the Olympic Games, 1984. He was a 6-time New York Golden Gloves champion. He won a national champion, Empire State Games. He won a world title, lost to Marlon Sterling, won it back, and lost it again to Aaron Superman Davis. But Mark Breland was a very, very good fighter. And right now he trains Deontay Wilder, doing a great job there. Here you have Emmanuel Stewart. Rest in peace, Emmanuel Stewart. He was the trainer for a lot of great fighters, but in this case, Hitman Thomas Hearns. Here you see Thomas Hearns joking around with Muhammad Ali. Or he was training for this fight. And like I said, the build-up for this fight was second to none. I mean, it was amazing because of the circumstance and the chance both men were taking with their career. You don't have that today. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. I always wonder what would happen if he was around today.
And here we go. Round one. Hagler, right off the bat, attempting to get inside. He'd love to be able to pin Hearns on the ropes if he can.
A more aggressive start by Hagler. Look at him, right for the body. Marvin Hagler only wants the body. He bangs Marvin. Oh, Hearns with the right hand.
Hearns with the right. Hearns hits him with an uppercut. Hagler, he's hurt. Hagler is done. Hearns got inside. Into the right uppercut.
Hagler throwing a left hook as Albertine requested
With a devastating punch.
in the right-handed position.
Swelling near Hagler's left eye. Again, Tommy trying to come inside the hands of Hagler. Low blow by Hearns. Hagler still looking for the body. A right by Hagler. Good right. Got it.
Hagler has Hearns on the ropes.
He has Hearns where he'd love to keep on the ropes, but Tommy comes off easily. Another good right by Hearns. Hagler is now shaking those right hands off, though, Al. He was stung a little early, and he's normally a slow starter. He's also bleeding. Hagler is cut. Hagler is cut. Bridge of the nose. Hagler in a roll. He is banging the body well. He is taking shots to the head. He blocks that right. Hearns tries to come over the uppercut, and Hagler ties him up with a minute to go in a wild first round.
Beautiful, beautiful fight.
There's blood all over Marvin Hagler's face. Can't tell where it's coming from. They thought it started in the bridge of the nose.
Gonna find Hearns down in a bit.
Over the face of Hagler. Here in round one. Hagler has him on the ropes. Hagler working at him. Hagler relentless, but Hearns trying to box his way out. Half a minute to go in round one. How far can this one go? That's very important. This is where Hagler wants him, but Hearns counter-punching off those ropes fairly effectively. Tremendous first round. Hagler hitting into the rope, working on it, but Hearns uppercutting again. Hagler bloody. A tremendous rotational first round as Hearns gets hurt. Hearns got stunned. Hagler was
Beautiful, beautiful fight.
Great first round. Incredible. Perhaps one of the best in middleweight history. Oh, the close left hand by Hagler. They said this fight would be determined on heart and the good chin. Right now, that's exactly what
I want you to read what Thomas Hearns says when asked the question.
You can throw the strategy out the window right now.
The reason why I started out slugging,
A wild first round. Hearns again trying to uppercut.
this is what Marvin Hagler said to the press.
Hearns trying to box.
Because
Moving.
I had to.
The rope. Coming back and trying to land that right.
The reason why I started slugging is because I had to.
They are yelling, keep boxing, Tommy, from his corner. And that looks like what he's going to try and do in this fight. Hearns, off balance. His hook is stepped on. Not close to a knockdown.
I'm going to let you listen to the radio call, but I have comments after this fight.
The first time,
Once again,
gets into the left hand.
Hearns was asked,
This round sort of...
why did you fight this way? The reason why I started out slugging is because I had to. I want you to remember those words.
Every punch that's thrown. Hagler, despite that weak disadvantage, has been able to get in.
This was war. Marvin Hagler.
For one simple reason.
Look at the grin on Marvin Hagler's face.
After he did come in, he's getting through that right hand, even though he's getting hit with it.
Hagler putting pressure on Thomas Hearns the entire fight.
Hagler has fought most of this round as a righty. Now he switches southpaw and lands. Not as effective as the righty as I thought, but now it's a southpaw. The jab lands well.
Now see, Hagler went back to southpaw when he started out righty. He started out southpaw and then he went to righty.
Punch your way out, punch your way out. A key element now is Hagler is working when he's on the inside. He's not just holding, he's working the body of Tommy Hearns.
Unbelievable fight.
They're not there. A little rubbery here in round two. Tommy, fluid and moving. He's not just holding, he's working the body of Tommy Hearns. Hearns was awkward. He was laying on it, but they're not there. A little rubbery here in round two. Tommy, fluid and moving. Trying to get inside again. The cut opens up over Hagler's forehead. And the blood begins
This is the way a fighter is supposed to look
working inside.
when he's out.
Half a minute to go in round two. Trading with him.
And there's no shame
And another right. He had Hearns
in being in this position when you gave it what you had.
off the rope.
Hearns never backed down.
Goes to the body.
He stood right with Hagler
Marvin Hagler wants to turn this into an
and said, "The hell with it, let's get it on."
another low blow. Richard Steele may take points away soon, but will it matter? Second round coming to an end. Hagler bloody, but very much
The great lightweight champion, Bo Jack, once said, I would never back down. I would never run. You would have to kill me right where you got me, because I'm here to fight.
As you say, though, Hagler turning it into a street fight.
And if you choose this profession, then this is what has to happen. Either you're stretched or your opponent is stretched. And there is absolutely no shame in that. I have to repeat myself. If you go down fighting, first, before you do that, you have to take the fight.
Very early. Adam stood.
You have to accept the fight. You have to accept the challenge.
Hagler doing the damage in round 2.
And when you get in there and you get the challenge, you have to train like you're supposed to train. And when you get in there, you're supposed to fight the way you're supposed to fight. And if you have to stand toe-to-toe with the man, the hell with it. Because the only thing you walk around in life with is your name. Everything else is irrelevant. Your name is your security. And you got to protect that name.
Hagler is all bloody. Time is called by Richard Steele to send Hagler over to the ring doctor.
As you see here, Marvin Hagler has Thomas Hearns against the ropes. He has fully committed to Thomas Hearns when he signed that contract. Somebody is not getting out of this fight walking. Somebody's going to be carried out. It's either me or it's you. And Marvin Hagler meant that. You can see it in his approach to the fight. You can see it in the fight. Thomas Hearns said, let's get it on. You don't find fighters like that anymore. You may see a fight like that here and there. But it's very rare to find fighters like that anymore. Corrales-Castillo fight was that way. Morales fight was that way. Pacquiao fought that way. I have to give him credit. Manny Pacquiao was a fighter. When he was coming up, he was a fighter. Ward and Gotti. Ali, Frazier. Foreman, Lyle. There's a time in your life when you have to say, this is it. This is it. And this was one of those fights. And I can take you in the past with thousands of fights. With the Zales and the Grazianos and you know, on and on and on. Tony DeMarco and Carmen Basilio. I mean, you had hundreds of fights like that. But to find a fight like that today is very rare. Now, to get back to the statement, Thomas Hearns was asked, why did you fight that way? Because he said he had to. He had to for two reasons. Marvin Hagler made him do that. And Hearns' legacy made him do that. And that's what a fighter is. That's why I respect these fighters. What happened to him with Leonard, and he couldn't get Leonard in the ring, and he had to prove to his Detroit natives, who had everything invested in him. A lot of people don't know that Hearns and Leonard fight, Detroit invested their houses, their life savings, their insurance policies. They put all that up on Thomas Hearns. People don't know that. Thomas Hearns was carrying all that weight into this fight. So when he got in front of Marvin Hagler, and Hagler wanted to get it going, he said, let's do it. And that's what boxing is all about. This is scrapbook boxing. Salute to both of these fighters. And I want to enter them into my Museum of the Boxing Hall of Fame and the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Salute to Marvin Hagler. Salute to Roberto Duran. And salute to Hitman Thomas Hearns. Sugar Ray Leonard, salute to you.